Welcome everyone at 6:30. Let's begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the roll.
Brittany Apple. Here. Joseph Just.
Here.
Paul Stapleton.
Here.
Lee Solberg.
Here.
Connie Randall.
Here.
Valerie Sherman.
Present.
We have a quorum, all are present. We have this evening's agenda was sent out and was posted. Is there a motion to adopt this evening's agenda?
Second.
Motion by Solberg, seconded by German. Discussion. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. You have the minutes in your packets for our regular meeting on August 9th and the special meeting that was held on the 30th. Are there any questions, additions, corrections to those minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Also.
Stapleton, second. Solberg, discussion. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We have the monthly bills to pay. Bill roster is in front of Alderman German right now. Any questions on the bills? Any questions on any of the bills? Is there a motion to approve said bills? By Just, is there a second? Apple, discussion. All in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Reports this evening, our liquor store manager, Helen Lickness.
We had another good month. Hopefully this one will be. September usually is. We'll start going down. Otherwise, I don't have anything else to mention.
Questions for Helen?
Everything's going good, everything's running good.
Staff-wise, scheduling, that type of thing, it seems to be working out all right for you now?
Yep.
Okay, well, thanks for a good report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please. Chief Croymans.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I don't have anything, we have some things on the agenda that we need to address. The SRO contract is one of them. Officer Edgar is not going to do 13-week course this time. He had some personal issues he had to take care of, but he'll be starting in November 29th through February 25th. So we have to amend the contract with the school.
The original contract that was approved had Officer Edgar attending the earlier session here, so the dates are incorrect in the existing SRO agreement. That's why we have the amendment here for this to correspond with the training he intends to take and get completed by February 28th. Any questions regarding the amended agreement? Is there a motion to approve them? By Just, is there a second? Solberg, discussion. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
The other thing I'd like to bring up is I haven't had a corporal position filled for 3 years now. Officer Mishler has been, just recently took up training. He's training one of the officers now. I'd like to promote Officer Mishler to corporal. He's been here, he'll be here 3 years. It'll be effective October 1st. He'll be here 3 years in October. It'll be his 3rd year he's been here.
So your recommendation is a promotion to corporal effective October 1st. And that
Our policy says that, the police policy says they have to be here 3 years or experience, so that would be his 3 years.
And that corresponds to a pay increase also, and what is that dollar amount?
It's a 50-cent increase, so at that time, October 1st, it'll be $21.15.
So that would be the motion then to promote Officer Mishler to corporal, effective October 1st, with pay as of October 1st of $21.15. That would be subject to change potentially later on, depending upon what action is taken on the salary ordinance this evening. So all positions are included in that. Is there a motion then to promote Officer Mishler to corporal?
Also move.
Motion by Stapleton, is there a second? Solberg. Discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
I don't have anything else unless anybody has any questions on the numbers.
I have one question. On the curfew, there hasn't been nobody, picked up or whatever for the last 2 months. Are they still picking up people, or the kids, I should say?
They have been, but I think Aaron and I have to get together and talk that over a little bit more. When they do pick them up now, they've been taking them home and having the parents sign for them. I know Aaron's, I believe you talked with the state's attorney.
I'm trying to, the state's attorney will no longer prosecute those because they're city ordinances and he doesn't have authority. Leaves it on to me, and I'm trying to work out a situation where I can have time on the court calendar in front of the magistrate on a specified monthly basis so that if we have any, they can be heard at that time. We had a new judge come into play, so I let him kind of get situated, and we'll bring that up again now.
That's all I have.
Okay. Any other questions for the chief? The miscellaneous tickets, they mainly traffic violations on the miscellaneous tickets then?
Yeah, that's what they would be anything other than what I have listed here. Traffic, speeding.
Yeah, because that's the highest number of the year so far.
Right. Drug arrests were about the same as they were previous month. I guess DUIs were the highest they've been this year too.
On the drug ones, does it seem to be a lot of repeat offenders?
Yeah. Yeah, what repeat.
Under the DUI, you keep statistics under the influence of alcohol, or are any statistics kept regarding alcohol or drugs as far as under the influence?
No, I'm going to start that next year. I haven't separated the two yet, but a lot of these, I would say half of them are drugs, drug DUIs.
Okay, other questions for the chief?
You still down an officer?
Yes, we are.
Any leads on
I've
that?
got a couple leads. We've also put together a brochure we're going to use. Officer Mishler did this weekend, in fact. We're going to use that at some of the colleges. I'm going to try and get some of the colleges to their job fairs and use that.
Oh.
See what we can get there. From what I understand, maybe we'll get some applications from Minneapolis.
Okay, thanks, chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Street and safety, Myron Dowd. Evening.
Rick did finally get his alligator license. For what he thought, I started about that on past that, so he's been up for making up hours for his appointments he goes to, but we don't have the sick leave yet, so he did get one in spring right now. So we did get that done. Well, we talked about the last meeting, to, sewers, those are really over by Nick Sutton, and over by Delaware Otherwise, we did talk about it, or we did visit with hiring a guy, to go around, too. He could start on the 20th. Really, he could have started sooner, but he didn't, tell him. Should work out pretty good. I mean, got some things going on right now where we really need additional manpower. So I'd like to see if we can hire him for the 25th this month. He does not have a CEO, so that's more of a thing that he can get the CEO. Otherwise, we did also ask for some estimates on the Bobcat and for all skid steers. So we do that Bobcat and John Deere, got us estimates. Bobcat came over. So I kept sitting with one hand saying if there was what they wanted compared to what we could get new for. One was 12 years old, 1,000 hours on it. One up there had 1,000 hours on it. New tracks, but we can get one new for, not a heck of a lot on it. So, warranty and everything on it, and it's a wheel instead of a skate,
I'm sorry, did you look at a track mower?
Did not, I went with wheel, because the tracks, we would not make great use of. I mean, down to all fill it, work great, but for what we use it for, the tracks, they wouldn't be good. We'd have to pour off on pavement, but good for winter time use, for what you guys would use, for going on your sidewalks and stuff, and hard on the tracks all the time. They said, what we use is more wheel. That's what we've had. Our old one is about wore out, and if baseball goes to the heat one, they can use that hose. That way it can still purpose it. They need it for aggregate down there. But they're using dirt for. So they can use that down there, put that on the shed, use that for aggregate rock, whatever they got to do with it down there. But yeah, the Bobcat was also going to snowball with that one too. We had to pay extra $1,200 for getting high flow put on it. There was no high flow. So it went on our snowball anyway. And then this Bobcat also replaced with a sweeper for our sidewalks for the minute.
This is a brand new machine? What's that? Brand new or 1 year old?
Brand new. I think it's 120.
Well, we got a number of things there that we can potentially act on, Myron, but maybe let's backtrack a little bit. Rick Oyen did complete his pesticide certification for commercial applicator. Our present policy allows for a 15-cent per hour increase in pay as a result of completing that certificate. Again, that's part of our salary ordinance that could change once we adopt a different salary ordinance. But since he's completed it, is there a motion to approve a 15-cent pay increase at this time for Rick Oyen for attaining their pesticide certification? Motion by Just, seconded by Sober. Discussion. Effective date of? Immediately. Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. The second thing that our street department had indicated that we interviewed a young man for the open position that we have as an equipment operator. The young man's name is T.J. Abraham. Visited with him, the street committee met with him, we completed the interview. Try to remember who else was there. Paul, do you have any comments regarding the interview?
I think he'd be a real nice fellow once he started out working there. So when is he going to start working, you say?
The 24th.
24th. Oh, I'll go ahead and make a motion.
Okay, motion then to hire T.J. Abraham. I think employment date would be September 20. Is that what he said?
I thought
A week from today?
24?
I thought it was 24.
24th? Okay. September 24th, with a beginning wage of $15.90 per hour, subject to change depending upon what we do with our salary ordinance later on. That would be the motion.
Also,
Okay, Stapleton's got the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Randolph. Discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Why don't you give TJ a call tonight, if possible, no later than tomorrow. Knows he's on board. Okay, and then the other thing that Myron mentioned is, in this year's budget, we do have to replace our skid steer loader. We did receive some preliminary quotes at this point, but it's an expensive enough item that we have to bid it out. So any action that we take tonight would be to authorize bid for a skid steer. And I guess he's gotten a couple quotes on a Deere and on a Bobcat. You know, we'll have to see how they come back, but the Bobcat seems to be, at least on the initial quote, probably a better economy for the city, and would work with the existing snow blower that we've got. But I guess, would there be a motion by the council then to authorize bids for skid steer? Motion by Solberg, is there a second? Just? Discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And then we talk somewhat about the garbage truck, replacing the garbage truck as well.
We did quotes on that. He was gonna email us, he should email the office what they could do for trading on that. So the only difference with those ones would be, it'd be a great time for chassis, one would be trading into Sterling. They no longer make Sterlings, so they're hard to get parts for, you know. The dash is the tortoise one, we needed a dashboard, we want to, we've got one down in Waiting, so that's kind of the one we want to trade it. Normally we take things with them and move the shop, use the dump truck, but we don't want that. You know, so, as soon as we see one, depending on what we do, he's got 4 coming in, we go somewhere, so we like 8 so we can see a truck. So,
So again, there would be a motion to authorize bids. Basically, the spec on the truck would be to have a Freightliner chassis on the truck.
20-yard box, 20-yard box, 5 for the hydraulics on the back. We want to assist for the fairy cup garbage can, we have to like assist back there.
So it's equipped the same way we are now.
Yep, 20-yard capacity.
And that would be a 2022 item that we'd be looking at, because I think there's a delayed delivery potentially on that. It's going to be well into 23 before, or 22 before the truck is going to be available. And from your conversations also with Sanitation Products, who builds those, is, you know, there's a limited build and limited availability.
Yes.
So
4 coming in.
after that, you know, we chose to wait to solicit bids, you know, it may not get built until 2020. That was our plan in our capital purchases, to look at replacing the garbage truck next year, take garbage. So is there a motion then to authorize solicitation of bids to replace the garbage truck?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Just, is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Apple, discussion. All in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
I don't have a whole lot of questions, unless you guys got something. I mean, we did have a lot of rain, we got that water that morning. Everything for the most part kept up, past couple areas that got a lot of water, but, we did everything we could do to keep it going. We had water coming over here, so we had water over on that side, coming over, so drains were open, we just water on time. So, although everything else is going all right.
Okay, questions for Myron then? questions?
I guess I have one. When you say the drains were open, I noticed that some people complained that two sides of the one at the sledding hill were down. Can you explain to the council what happened there?
That one on the one side, the house mowed, we literally cleaned it out and it was long before it rained, and everything came in there, so it washed all along, put things down, and put that one. Got up there, opened that up, our main drain wasn't open, really, the main drain probably. Right now, it's open now, or we got this heavy rain, we opened it up all the way, so we can regulate that well, and all of that, you know, country up here, we have some line between the traffic building, street up there, we got things, so there's no, we can control from all four, if they're all open, that one was not, they were doing it all the way. And that was drain, real fast. That doesn't stop that one drain, we pump like that, closer around, two right down there in that corner. As far as the other corner down there, they had, that was wide open, where he cut his old pipe into. Back then, I don't know, but then they did the Highway 10 project. The drain that's coming from there is actually going right into him. I mean, that's, you know, see, there's a line on it when they did that, so there's nothing we can do about that. Water is going to clear there, so. But yeah, the ones up there, we're gonna keep better eye on. All the rest of them. Like I said, the valve was closed down where you set it at. All set it to the time that point. But I had those elevators stop popping up.
Did you get your question answered?
Yeah, and I think that was more so just because I know it was a question of the community, and if anybody's watching, that it got answered.
Because the whole purpose, you know, of that is a retention pond to keep other areas downstream from flooding. You know, there's city parks, they're all in flood zones. That's what those are all designed for, is when you get a heavy rain, is that you retain as much of that as long as you can for a slower release to make sure we don't flood downstream.
At that point, that one of our parks was pretty old. We got to see it. It was, so really just a lot in that period of time. So.
Other questions for Myron? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Water and sewer, Gary Spencer. Water tower's full.
Yes, raised, water tower is full, that's the good news. Water tower painting project is done. It's dried, I got permission this morning from the engineer, and he got it from the wire iron to go ahead and refill it. You're probably gonna notice in the community, there's probably gonna be some dirty water. It's the effect of putting 300,000 gallons back into the tower to fill it. It filled it fairly rapidly. Sure, stir things up in the lines. The only bad thing that happened out of this is, I think possibly it might be related, is the double water break we had up by the courier in front of the old abstract office. Come to find out, that's an old cast iron line in the water main. The map showed it as plastic, so the engineers apparently didn't know. But anyway, the first break happened, and there was a small hole on the bottom of the pipe. We hired Lee Hanson's guys to come up. They cut out that chunk of pipe and spliced in a piece of plastic. Thought it was all good and done. Go back the next day, the water was boiling out of there. About 10 feet down the line, towards Delray's house, the line snapped completely in half. And it could be because of when we started this up, this procedure, you know, because we had to shut the water tower off. Some of the lines probably experienced a little bit more higher pressure than they're rated at. And that old cast iron line is brittle, it's pretty rusty, and it's going to be have to replace probably 2 blocks in the future. It's lasted down someday, but so far it's holding. They fixed it again, and we check it every day just to make sure. But, yep, the water tower is completely be done. McGuire did an excellent job, I think. The guys that had there, we met with the foreman every day, keep up on what was going on. And Helms sent out one of their workers, and he crawled over the tower, checking paint thicknesses to make sure it was up to spec, and according to him, everything is what was required as far as paint thickness and quality. Should be good for at least another 10 plus years. I believe next year, I don't know what time time frame it is, but they're supposed to come back and start on the ground storage for next year, so we'll see when they get here. Other than that, that's about all I have. The SCADA system worked flawlessly, and everything worked up really good for us.
I think it provided some extra training for our fire department too. I think we had some training sessions as to how to deal with the fire if we didn't have a water tower, so.
Right.
Provided that opportunity as well. Questions for Gary?
I have a question, Gary. The old Tasty Freeze over there, their issue with the water over there.
Right.
What do you think on that?
I talked to Doug, I talked to Joy, and they can't figure it out, and I'm not sure what it is. There's an old foundation there where there used to be a house. There was a trailer house there at one time. But even since first built the Tasty Freeze, according to Larry O'Connor, the neighbor there. And it could be some old plumbing from that, but Mike tested the water and there's no chlorine in it. So we don't believe it's city water. I don't know what it could be. But the solution I could see, and I talked to Doug about it, is to dig back down where the water is coming through the bank and start digging back and see what you run into.
How many people are on that service?
Oh, well, I mean, just from the main down.
Yeah.
Well, there's Larry O'Connor and Tasty Freeze. They share a common line, I believe, that goes up. They both have their own shutoffs. So I'm not sure if they're both hooked together, because there is no water main on that street. The closest water main is on Pine, which is just a block, just up the
So
block.
if we shut the main off, it would shut off.
Shut off O'Connor's and everybody, be a 2-block area there, and would probably be close to a dozen houses, including Pizza Hut, would be shut off.
Because they were requesting that the city could shut it off over a period of time over the night to see if.
Doug talked about that, and I said, no, I said, if it was just 2 businesses, it'd be fine, but you can't shut people off overnight, that's not acceptable.
How do we know then if it's a city issue or not, if we're not shutting the water off to see?
Well,
If
because
the
it's not
city's
up to the
the issue.
main, it's considered private, and so anything attached to that main, all the way up into a person's property belongs to them.
So if the residents agree to it,
I guess if you get a dozen people all saying we won't flush our toilets.
I'm just concerned if we don't know if it's a city problem or not. If it is a city problem, we want to fix
I don't think it's a city
it.
problem at all. There's
If there's no chlorine in
no
the
water.
water, it couldn't be.
no water main down there, it's not, so that makes it not the city problem if there's no main there. Those lines are all attached up to Pine to the main that's on Pine. So anything attached to our main, we own the main itself. Anything attached to that main, including the service line, everything up into the house belongs to the property owner. That's their.
So how long would the water need to be shut off for?
Probably at least 6 to 7 hours, we estimated. See if it slows down.
Are there any other properties that have that issue other than the one?
Not that I've noticed, I mean, in that area.
Yeah. So there's multiple properties served by that main.
Right. Yeah, nobody else has had any leakage that we know of. The leak is kind of in between Three Bean and Larry O'Connor. It's kind of on the property line right there. Where Doug Ham dug up that sewer, and that's what he discovered when he dug up that sewer. And it could be an issue related to why the parking lot was always so wet. So it could be an old water line down there from a house or a trailer house that's leaking.
But that's their line there because the main is blocked.
Right, that's all
That's their
their,
line regardless.
that's all for them to, at their expense
Yeah.
to find that. But we don't have any, I don't have any solutions to it, and Ham's don't either, other than, I say, just start digging up again and see, dig back, follow the water, and see what you find. Could be an old line there, could be spring water, and our spring's old, it's down. Could be something as simple as that.
That's just right here for spring. O'Connor said they never had any problems until in their basement as far as.
Yeah, there's no problems right now in ours, so I don't think.
There was earlier though, because they called me on it, so.
Oh,
But,
okay. Mrs. O'Connor said she didn't have any problems.
yeah,
When I talked to her. But, I don't think it has anything to do with the Highway 10 project. Because when they dug through there, the trench was high and dry, there was no water. I checked with Lee and the acting engineer that was here, the overseer, and there's nothing in their notes about cutting through any service lines. They dug, one time, the service line that used to supply his old building over there, I think where Taco John's is now,
Yeah.
somewhere in that area, came from Pine also. But then when we put the water main in on the south side of the 4-lane, he hooked up to that. And they didn't find any water lines or anything when they dug through there. At least they didn't report it, nothing. Usually anytime they find anything, they would call me right away and ask what they should do with it. So that's,
you don't see any issues though if they start digging it up and then there's no way to come back to the city and
I would see how it's all private line, but it's a service line, it belongs to them, it's their property owner. You know, I should have probably done that before they put the new cement driveway in, but it's either here or there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't have any quick solution.
Okay, other questions for Gary? We do have a 7 o'clock hearing to conduct. Okay, thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
It is 7 o'clock, and it's time and place for a public hearing by the Board of Adjustment on a proposed conditional use permit. So we'll temporarily adjourn as a city council and reconvene as a Board of Adjustment to hear permit application number 2021-29, and it's submitted by Destina Gill and Nishto Incorporated for a conditional use permit. The request, if granted, would permit the applicant to use the property located at lots 19 through 24 on block 61, the address being 406 Fifth Avenue East in Sisseton. And the change would be home occupation. There would be an office located there for a nonprofit organization. Destina is here this evening to kind of explain her plans, for the property and answer any questions that the council may have or the public may have. So the floor is yours, Destina.
Good evening. The plans for Nishto using that space is temporary. We're hoping by the end of next summer we'll be done. We're working on building a separate campsite area. Right now it's just a base where we have our supplies. If I need to do a Zoom meeting, I can go there. The upstairs is a rental still. Right now there's a nurse there. So it was a rental, it'll be a rental again. Of course, the rental while we use it, and then when we move on, it'll just become a full.
So its basic function would stay the same as a dwelling.
Yeah.
There would be places for people to stay overnight there. That would continue, but its primarily use would be for an office to conduct your business there.
Yeah, there's one room we turned into an office. That's my space. Everything else is the nurses.
Would traffic significantly increase at all around the building? Does our city attorney have any questions or things that we need to cover?
I'm assuming it would, like, you're not putting up signage or additional lighting, and there's not gonna be excess garbage.
No, you won't even know that's happening there.
Okay, and if we talk about similar use situations, it's one room that would be similar to like if somebody's cutting hair in their house and has a license, a conditional use license for that, probably less traffic and that sort of thing even.
Way less.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I think that is all.
Are there any questions from the public at all regarding, since it's a public hearing, so we're interested in knowing what the public has for any type of questions or concerns regarding the request. Council, have any questions?
The only thing I would have to say is, it is a residential rental property, and that's one of our biggest issues in the community is finding rental properties or housing. And like you said, it's just temporary, it's gonna be back on the market probably sometime next year, so.
What's actually still being rented?
Yep.
Yeah, that'll always, when it became open, we had probably 50-year process around it, so.
That'd be my only issue.
Okay, is there a motion then to approve permit number 2021-29
So,
by Solberg? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Apple, discussion, further discussion? All in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's a roll call vote, excuse me.
Brittany Apple.
Aye.
Joseph Just.
Aye.
Paul Stapleton.
aye.
Lee Solberg.
Aye.
Connie Randall. Delroy German.
Aye.
Terry Jasper.
Aye. It's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Okay, we'll reconvene again as the city council, and we're up to building permits. We'll have another hearing or a review at 7:15 with the tribal secretary and some representatives of the tribal council regarding the warming shelter. That'll take place at 7:15. So the building permits, we have 4. 2021-26 is the sidewalk at the West Side School. 2021-27 is Natasha Renville. It's a storage shed on the property at 705 East Walnut. The Coteau Valley Credit Union is adding another sign to their present sign there. It's basically to indicate an ATM is available. It's going to be mounted on the existing sign frame. And Brian Heineke, representing Cabana Boy Properties, LLC, is putting in a privacy fence at 713 East Cherry. These requests or building permits were all viewed and reviewed by the zoning board, and the zoning board recommends approval by the city council. Is there a motion or any questions regarding any of these?
Make a motion.
Motion by Just. Is there a second? Randolph, discussion? Discussion, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Finance report for the month of August. So your packets. It's available to the public. Looks like we're tracking okay, income and expense wise. Any comments by our finance officer?
I did look back, every couple months I like to kind of look back at the previous year to see where we are with our property tax and sales tax revenue. So right now for this year for property tax, we're at $458,399, and last year at this time we were at $415,740. So we're a little ahead on property tax revenue for this year. And same with sales tax. Last year at this time we were at $681,027, and we're at $777,000. So we're doing well.
All right, is there a motion then to approve the August financial report?
Also move.
Motion by Stapleton, is there a second? Seconded by Just. Discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. City Attorney.
Just stuff that will be brought up later.
We reserve time at our city council meetings for public comment. And we have a 5-minute time slot here for public comment. Is there any comment from the public? Public comment? Okay, on October 5th through the 8th, the South Dakota Municipal League has their annual conference. And generally, we approve travel for any city council member, mayor, or we have some finance officers that attend those at some point in time, but it would be primarily for elected officials at the South Dakota Municipal League Conference. It's in Spearfish, October 5th through the 8th. So if someone wants to attend that, I guess we can act and authorize travel expenses for that. Is anybody planning on attending? Anybody have a possibility of attending? I don't plan to attend. Is it necessary that we take any action then? Okay. All right. Okay. Is Secretary Thompson here? Okay. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello again. Good evening.
It's nice to have a table to sit at. This is my umbrella.
Okay. Yeah, it must have been raining pretty hard when you came, huh?
Yes.
So maybe you can just, we like to get together with you, a couple times during the year, just to kind of review, how the past year went as far as the warming shelter is concerned. And, if you do have some requested changes, from what we have in the existing agreement, which is a continuing agreement, then we've got to post for a public hearing if we're going to make any significant changes. But tonight, we would just like to review it with you to see how it's been working. And you provide input to the city council, and we get good communication going back and forth on that facility.
Yes.
So that's the purpose tonight.
Okay. Well, it's here too. I think this, the warming house has been serving a very good purpose as far as giving shelter to our tribal members that are homeless. And it's been going really well. I mean, I think Jim was testified last time that there's really not that, there's no calls and there's not really any problems that are major. So just that we served quite a few people. In January, we had 62 males, 34 females. And so it varies as people come and go. And if there is any disruptive behavior, I mean, it's written up in the precinct law. But that's rare. It's been rare. So I wanted to request a conditional use permit again for that same purpose, warming shelter, to open November 1st and run through April 30th, 24/7. Last year it got so close, I came in and requested the 24/7, and that seemed to work out really well because a lot of times they don't want to leave the shelter during the day. And so there's nowhere to go, so then we go. And a lot of them said, like, the reason they drink is because it helps them stay warm. So when it was 24/7, a lot of them just stayed back. And they just stayed inside where it was warm and stayed sober.
Is your staffing the same this coming year as it was this last year as far as the number of people? Are the same people staffing it that did before?
No, we'll advertise again,
Okay,
and we'll probably have a new crew
okay.
because we have to utilize a program that only runs 12 weeks. So because of the finances, so we're utilizing a program where they let them train for 12 weeks, and then we would have a turnover and then bring somebody new in. But we're going to have 2 permanent staff. That would be the director and then the assistant. So.
Is there any questions by the city council members?
But it would be staffed 24 hours, you just
Oh,
don't
yes,
know.
it would be
Okay.
staffed 24 hours.
I know last year you guys kind of kept an eye on the surrounding area for trash and stuff like that, or bottles and stuff.
Yeah, they picked up. It was the residents that actually picked up.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I'll give them something to do.
yeah,
I'm sure most of them were willing to do it.
they were.
What's that?
Chief, do you recall anything last year? Everything went up.
Yeah, as you recall, I think the city did install a garbage can, in front of the building to help promote, the litter, the proper disposal of litter and minimize the amount of trash. And then the other thing we generally hear is, and that having a staff there makes a big difference as far as the loitering is concerned, to try to minimize that as much as possible. And if you're open more hours, I guess that's going to minimize that as well, I would think. So,
Oh, yeah, it'll be winter.
so really what you're proposing here isn't anything different than what we have already got in place with you.
Yes.
Except for the 24th.
No, the public meeting occurred at our last meeting, and they had requested the 24 hours, and the public had addressed some of the garbage issues. So what I've done, Rona, is created an addendum to the initial permit so that we can keep them all together and not have separate filings in separate years, granting that 24-hour use because it was voted on at that meeting and granted, and also addressing that the city would put that garbage can in, it's been put in, and that the facility itself would look or manage garbage issues. And then I also have prepared it that there wouldn't be a review unless neighbors, public, city, or SWO believe that there's a need for it, because it has run so smoothly in the last 2 operating years, correct? It's been
Yes.
open for 2. That's the structure of the addendum that I put together from the last public meeting. So there wouldn't be any changes other than what you requested there. If you had more today, we'd have to have an additional public meeting.
No, thank you, that's great.
So is there action necessary on this addendum since it's a 2019 addendum? Or did we
You
acted on
You
that
acted
last
on that at our last meeting. This is to put into writing what was voted on by the council. And so this just needs to be approved, the highlighted portions of the main changes approved and signed by you and Amber to create the record appropriately.
So the question is then, does this council this evening need to take action on this addendum? Okay, so we just execute it and attach it to the original addendum by virtue of public hearing and the action that the council took at the previous meeting. Okay. All right.
Is there a new application?
No,
No.
no. And there won't be in the future.
I don't have to do anything.
Continue to do a good job of running.
Yeah.
Unless you want some sort of major change again in the future, it's fine unless we start running into problems.
Okay,
Okay?
that sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Okay, some other new business items before we get into our next public hearing regarding the medical marijuana ordinance at 7:30. One is to authorize the mayor to sign a financial assistance agreement with the South Dakota Department of Transportation for our airport project. And basically, it was our rotating beacon and our wind cone. Money became available through CARES Act funding through the state of South Dakota to provide $50,000 worth of funding for that purpose out there. You probably saw that in your packets. So I need action by the council to authorize the signature on that document. Is there a motion?
I make a motion.
Solberg, is there a second? Or excuse me, I'm sorry. Solberg, do you have a second? Discussion. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. In your packet, also, there was a pay request by McGuire Iron. Our water superintendent reported on the water tower coating project, and the amount that's certified for payment, and there'll be some retainage left on here for $4,560, but the amount of the request this evening is for $86,640, and it's been signed by our engineers. Is there a motion to authorize the pay request by McGuire Iron?
Also move.
So, Stapleton?
Yep.
Is there a second?
Second.
German, discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, information and discussion items. Our regular October meeting will have to be scheduled for Tuesday, October 12th, since Monday, the 11th, is a state and federal holiday. So that will be our regular October meeting date. And then maybe for information and the discussion items, we can cover this. Joel Johnson, from Code Enforcement Specialist, has been in our community, and he has inspected properties. And to my knowledge, I believe 79 warning letters have gone out, for potential violations to ordinances. We may hear from some of the folks. I've reviewed them all, and they're available for any council member if they want to look them over. If you take a look at the majority of them, a lot of it has to do with, general, keeping properties cleaned up, trees trimmed, and yards picked up, vehicles, and painting, those types of things. But what the intent is to get the word out there to folks and open up a line of communication with Joel as to, how things can be taken care of. And for people that have merely pickup items that needed to be done, I believe a 30-day notice was given for cleanup. And if there's something major than that, I think he's giving them until next spring. But the important thing is people need to contact him. He's got a number in those letters, and people need to reach out to him and open up a line of communication. He also indicated that we as a city, probably in comparison to some of the other communities that he works with in code enforcement, we probably need to take a look at some of our ordinances and make them more clear, when it comes to enforcing these things. And he's provided us some sample ordinances that we forwarded to Aaron for review, but I think will be, did you get them?
I got those. Yeah.
But anyway, it was just recently, and in an October meeting, we'll be discussing it again to see what we can do in our ordinances to put a little more teeth in, or eliminate some of the gray area as far as enforcement is concerned.
Oh, I got that.
Did he leave any business cards, or do we have a way for other people in the community who would like to make a complaint about a property for us to direct them to him? Or do we have a way to maybe put it in the newspaper? I don't know.
He's
Just
very,
for the people who maybe didn't receive a letter, but who would like to discuss an issue with him. Because I know that was one of the things that kind of took council.
I can reach out
Out
to
of
him
it.
and find out
Okay.
how he would like us to address that, if he wants us to put his information on our website or something like that.
Yeah.
His number is not on there.
It's not.
Oh, it is last year.
okay. Well, again. Yeah, I think right now, since we've got just a couple more minutes, it would be a great time to provide a couple of awards here. If Gary Spencer could come forward here. Gary and Michael have received their Drinking Water Certificate of Achievement Award here. And this is, I'll read this so people know what's involved. Congratulations to you from the DNR, Department of Agricultural and Natural Resources. You are a system operations specialist of public water system that has met the requirements of the Safe Drinking Water Act and the state of South Dakota regulations for supplying safe drinking water to the public. For your efforts and concern for safe drinking water, we would like to present this achievement award to you. This program was initiated by the Drinking Water Program to reward those systems and their system operations specialists that have demonstrated excellence in water system management and maintenance. Thank you for your interest in maintaining safe drinking water for your consumers. So both Gary and Michael have received these, and the city has also received an award from the DNR, and congratulations. For 20 consecutive years, the City of Sisseton Public Water System has met the requirements of the Safe Drinking Water Act and the state of South Dakota's regulations. 20 consecutive years of supplying safe drinking water to the public is a remarkable achievement. It's our pleasure to present you the Secretary's Award for Drinking Water Excellence. And one other note here is that of course, this being the 20th year, there's not that many communities, within the state of South Dakota that have been able to achieve that. So there's only 35 systems statewide that have achieved 20 consecutive years of compliance. So I think we've done an excellent job here in the city of Sisseton, and thanks to you and Michael. Let's give them a hand. Okay, it's 7:30, and the process for this evening is to have a joint meeting with our planning commission, is basically our zoning board. Those planning commission members are here as well, and the purpose is to have a joint session where the zoning board meets concurrently with the city council, and for us to hear comments, answer questions from the public regarding a proposed ordinance to allow the establishment of medical marijuana dispensaries and/or potentially growing and processing facilities for medical marijuana within the city of Sisseton. So we'll begin with a motion from the council to convene jointly as a planning commission and the city council. Is there a motion? Motion by Solberg. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Apple. Discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I guess we do have our members of our planning commission here. I'll introduce them. Mike Cheetah, Larry Peterson, Samantha Stickland, Corey Deitch, Gary Hulsack. Those are our members of the planning commission.
I think Wade might be on Zoom.
And Wade Beflin is on Zoom. Wade, can you acknowledge if you're here? Maybe he's on mute, but
Maybe that's on here, I'm not sure.
But we have a quorum of the planning commission here as well as the city council. So I'm going to turn it over to our city attorney to go through the ordinance so that everybody understands it. All of the council members has received it some time ago, as our planning commission members have also received a copy of it prior to the meeting, and it also was published, in our local paper for notice. So she'll review it with everyone here, and We'll entertain any questions or concerns from the public at that point. So Aaron, the floor is yours.
In addition to the areas that Terry addressed, that it was published, it's also been on our website for the public to access for a period of time too, as it was required to be. Through this process in the zoning, we have one ordinance that we're addressing. It's Ordinance 675. What we're doing is amending our current chapter and sections of definitions that we utilize throughout our municipal ordinances to address the necessary definitions that would be used with regard to the cannabis operations. Those definitions have been adopted by the state, or will be completely adopted by the state on October 4th, but they're set forth within regulations and statutes. These are the definitions that the communities around the state are utilizing for this purpose. So when you look at Ordinance 675 and the first be it ordained, through the 2 lines on the top of the second page are all definitions, and all definitions that will be utilizing within our municipal ordinances with regard to the medical cannabis laws. So that would be the first part of this ordinance. The second part of the ordinance is to amend Chapter 17.24 district regulations to add prohibited uses under that section. And what that does, that's the next be it ordained on page 2. It just specifically sets forth that uses and structures not specifically listed as a permitted use, special permitted use, or as a conditional use in a particular zoning district shall be prohibited. So it's a general underlying prohibition for anything outside of our conditional uses as they're set forth within the different chapters, basically as a catch-all. The next amendment would be to Section 1744.010, permitted uses in the central commercial district. We are amending that. If you go to page 2, let me make sure I'm talking about this right. Page 2, it would be the second, be it further ordained on that page, where it talks about central commercial district, and what we're specifically allowing there is a new permitted use of a cannabis dispensary. That, if you look under the initial part, is identified as, in addition to the definition contained in SDCL 34-20G-1, this term is further defined as a legally licensed entity that acquires, possesses, stores, delivers, transfers, transports, sells, supplies, or dispenses cannabis, cannabis products, paraphernalia, or related supplies and educational materials. That would be, based upon this amendment, allowed in our central commercial district. The next amendment, if we go back to page 1 on the very top, it's to amend Section 1748.010, which is permitted uses in the highway commercial district. And then if you go on the second page to the third be it for ordained, it addresses, the third be it further ordained, it addresses that we are going to amend the highway commercial district to allow a cannabis establishment subject to 5.40, and that's the next ordinance. But what that is, if you look at the definitions on page 1, a cannabis establishment is a cannabis cultivation facility, a cannabis testing facility, a cannabis product manufacturing facility, or a cannabis dispensary. That would be solely allowed in highway commercial. And the reason why we've limited it there is some of those facilities have an odor to them. My understanding is the cultivation facilities have the odor of marijuana to them, so we're trying to limit them from being in the downtown area near our parks and stuff, or the majority of our residences. Also, one of them utilizes or can utilize in the manufacturing port more of an explosive material. And so we want that out and away from the general town area, is why it's pushed out to highway commercial. Then we go further into modifying 17-80260 that addresses the cannabis establishment specifically. The council has determined that we are not going to limit the cannabis establishments in the city of Sisseton, but that they must follow our city ordinances and state laws as they're set forth in these two proposed ordinances and also as they're set forth in statute and regulations by the state. Some of the zoning issues that are addressed are the distance between the cannabis establishment and what another establishment might be next door or close to it. So by state law, a cannabis establishment shall not be located less than 1,000 feet from a public or private school existing before the date of the cannabis establishment application. They're just trying to keep it within 1,000 feet of the schools. And that, I know you've probably read Sioux Falls is doing that, and the news is making it seem like the cities are doing this. That's a state requirement that we're required to follow. Then we, as a county, as a council, have determined that a cannabis establishment shall not be located less than 500 feet from a single or multifamily resident, church, child daycare facility, library, park, hospital, clinic, long-term care facility, mental health facility, substance abuse facility, correctional facility, drug education and or counseling center, funeral home, shelter, group home, or other cannabis establishment existing before the date of the cannabis establishment application. What we're trying to do there is keep the facility from different types of businesses that may not appreciate having a cannabis establishment next to it. The next is an exemption from separation requirements, and there is an exemption if they provide documentation waiving the setback requirement from the title holder of the land benefiting from the separation. So if they find a place and it's not a school, because that one cannot be waived unless the school is built after the facility is, and have the person who would be affected by that 500 feet, say it would be a child daycare facility on one side and they're less than 500. If that person waives that, then the council could approve that. Then there's just the prescribed setback separation distances from existing uses are to be measured from the lot line of the property where the cannabis establishment is proposed, so it determines how it's measured. Then it goes into other locational requirements. Permanent or temporary cannabis establishments are prohibited in all other zoning districts and not eligible for home occupation use. It shall be unlawful to operate a cannabis establishment in a building which contains a residence or a mixed-use building with commercial and residential uses. It shall be unlawful to operate any portion of a cannabis establishment outdoors. All business activity and operational activity shall occur within a secure building structure not accessible to the public. The next thing would be controlled access. No cannabis establishment shall share a premise or permit access directly from another cannabis establishment, business that sells alcohol or tobacco, or if allowed by law, other cannabis establishment. Then there's hours of operation. We've determined that they can be open Monday through Sunday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And there should be no limitation. That would be the cannabis dispensaries where you would go to get the medical marijuana and purchase it personally. But we put no limitation on the hours of operation of the cannabis cultivation facilities, the manufacturing facilities, or the testing facilities, because we view that more as an agricultural business that's ongoing, and we don't know what hours they would need to be working those. Documentation of state licensure, of course, within this they have to provide proof that they've been licensed by the state also, so it's no cannabis dispensary. That should be establishment. Let me grab my pen. establishment shall acquire, possess, store, transfer, deliver, transport, supply, or dispense cannabis products, paraphernalia without providing documentation or licensure from the state of South Dakota. Number 7, the zoning official is authorized to issue permits, building uses for cannabis establishments subject to the following. When they apply for their license, they should submit a site plan containing the following information. Any information required by the applicable building permit, ingress, egress plan, parking plan, lighting plan, including security lighting, screening, security, fencing plan, refuse plan, hours of operation, any other information as lawfully may be required by the zoning official to determine compliance with this ordinance and state law. Documentation of the ability to meet the setback, separation requirements, and documentation of the state licensure. Then finally, it says all cannabis establishments are required to be constructed in conformance with the 2021 edition of the International Building Code and International Fire Code. That would address all of our zoning issues, and you can see it doesn't, you might be thinking, well, that some things are missing. Well, we're just trying to address how this will work with the land uses. There's another ordinance that we'll address next that will be more specific about different things that you might be thinking about now. So I guess I have any questions from the board personally, or any of the public, or any of the councilmen personally.
I have a question. So by law, we have to allow at least one, correct?
Yes.
In
Dispensary.
Dispensary, okay. Sorry, let me just find the page here. So where it says the city of Sisseton shall have no limit on the number of cannabis establishments, provided the time, place, and manner of said cannabis establishments comply with this ordinance. So if the city had decided that we only wanted one, or if we put in there, there's no limit, and we have 6 people coming forward with wanting a license issued, can the city choose to only issue a license to a few versus the others if they still all qualify by what you have laid out here?
That's not the intent. The intent would be to grant the license to them based upon the language here. If you want a limitation on a number, we would put it in the ordinance as it's read now. One thing I want to just point out there where you said there shall be no limitation on cannabis establishments. Remember, the dispensary is the only one that you're required to have one in. Here we're saying, hey, you can come in, you can have dispensaries, you can also have these cultivation and other facilities too. There's no limitation on any. What we've done, and we haven't gotten to the next order, or ordinance, proposed ordinance, is utilize the license application fee to hopefully control that to a degree. That and the zoning requirements where they can and cannot have them should control numbers and applications amounts, because there's only specific places they can be. And some people aren't going to be willing to pay the licensing fee that we're going to require.
Then they'd also have to pay the state to try to get that before they ever got this anyway.
It just worries me not having to say no limit. I mean, does Sisseton really need 5 dispensaries, or?
That's a question that is up to
Just for
the
discussion,
council.
Yeah, I guess this proposed ordinance can be amended by virtue of the input of the council and by the public. I guess the thought process between it, before the unlimited part of it, as our city attorney had indicated, the size of our community and the setback requirements are going to provide a pretty significant amount of limitations as to where you can have it.
Unless, I'm sorry, I didn't.
And then the other thing is, if you limit them to, a certain number, then you have to have a process as to what kind of decision-making do you do on granting one and denying another. And you have to put a whole other procedure in place as to why you would select one over another.
But this also allows for the exemption from separation requirements, meaning that
Yeah, property owners, if they don't care that they're going to have a cannabis facility next to them, can waive that, which honestly only makes sense because that's why the setbacks are there, is to protect those property owners.
Yes, I would like to see a limit. No water tower has a limit of 5, I believe.
And they're a fairly big community.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure our community needs 5 or 6 or however many could potentially
Any
operate in our community.
Comment from any of the planning commission members or the public?
I guess I would like to see a limit myself. I agree with her, I like to think we need, there's a lot of property, if you want to go east of town, that's gonna get out of the zoning part of the system. I mean, I've got a lot I could sell, when people come out there and buy stuff, they'll build a building out there. They'll drive to wherever you're gonna build it, once you get east of town, it's gonna open up. You're gonna be away from schools, away from property, away from parks. I mean, people are gonna drive to wherever they wanna go get it, so I think we should put some kind of limit on it. I realize that the dollars are gonna affect a lot of people too that are gonna open it up, but they're gonna make money on it too, so they're gonna retreat that money that they invest quite rapidly.
One thing that should be pointed out is, let me just think on the highway commercial, because when you're talking east of town, that would be the one that would. Okay. The highway commercial, that the modification to that portion to allow conditional use is straight cannabis establishment, so it would be each type. I just want to make that clear. And the one downtown would just be the dispensary.
Any other comments? So if you want to change the proposed ordinance, what the procedure would be is a council member would bring forth an amendment to this. We would vote then on the amendment, and then we would have further discussion on the ordinance as amended. And then we would take a motion then from the planning commission then to recommend passage of that amended ordinance to the city council. Is that the correct procedure, Madam City Attorney?
So Aaron, I'm sorry, just to clarify, you said if for example, I made a motion to amend it to limit 1, you're saying that's 1 per this cultivation facility, 1 testing facility?
I would ask you to, because the only one that state law is going to require us to have is the dispensary. We
Okay.
have to have one of those. We don't have to have any of the rest of them.
So the council member would state the motion, makes that clear in your motion.
Do you have any legal concerns with if that, because this has been published or available to the public, and the public has seen this as no restrictions on number?
I don't have any addition, as long as it's republished, because
But we won't be having a second public hearing. This is the only public hearing that.
then I do have an
takes
issue
place.
with that.
So we can't schedule another public hearing?
We can, we're
It
just not
starts
gonna
the whole process
We're
over
not gonna
again.
have this process by October. This is why this stuff was given to you guys.
I don't remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember saying that we couldn't change something after the fact.
I thought we were instructed to contact me with any questions you have.
But still, it is a public hearing, and I think we have the right, based on what the public says, we need to listen to the public's concerns, and I think we should have the ability to change it.
I would like to make a motion that the city of Sisseton shall have a limit of 1.
Dispensary or? Because the process plant and stuff, I mean,
I'm sorry, say that again.
if it's a processing plant or whatever, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's to you.
Sorry, there's multiple comments, sorry. one more.
If it's a processing plant, does that matter to you if there's more than one of those, since you're not gonna be selling it?
Yeah, I would say dispensary
Yeah.
myself. I would go with the limit that the state has.
one, then you're just limiting it. I don't know.
I just don't think our town needs, I mean, if everywhere is gonna be limited to at least one, I mean, there's quite a few surrounding areas too.
So then the thing that you need to consider is if you limit it to one and then you have two people come in and apply and they both meet all the requirements as far as the zoning, what is your process gonna be for who you approve and who you deny?
Is that fine? I mean, is that something?
Well, it's
that
something,
would-
it's
That's
something
something
you have
that
to
we as
think
a city
about.
would
It's something that
Think
you have
about,
to-
but I don't know if I necessarily would have the answer to that.
I guess any business, I think you should have options if you're, you know, I could see a couple, you know, because if I wanna go buy something, I wanna have a say where I go, you know, I just don't wanna have to go to one certain place. So, since there was a couple, I would be in favor of that, just, you know.
Well, we've got a motion right now, we don't have a second. The motion is to amend the proposed ordinance to restrict it to one dispensary. Is that your motion, the dispensary?
I'll change it to two if he's gonna second it.
Well, what is your motion?
I'll, I'll make a motion to limit it to two cannabis dispensaries.
Okay,
I'll second.
we have a motion by Apple and a second by Solberg to limit the number of establishments to two.
Okay, there's a
Is that-
difference
is there-
between an
is
establishment
that
and a dispensary.
Dispensary, or is it an establishment?
Dispensary.
Should then on the other ones, you cannot call them establishment because by definition, a dispensary falls under them. You'll have to go through each type, the cannabis cultivation facility, cannabis manufacturing facility, and cannabis testing facility when you determine the numbers on those.
So if your motion is strictly, for the sake of discussion, strictly involving dispensary, we would have to take separate amendments on the other items. So be clear about what your motion is again, restate your motion.
Motion to limit dispensaries to two.
We have a second to that motion. Further discussion on that? Any further discussion? So the procedure would be for a roll call vote by the council on the amendment, and then see if the planning commission would accept the ordinance 675 as amended.
No, we've got to see if the planning commission accepted it as it was initially written. If there's a no on that, thinking there is because Mr. Peterson stated he wanted a limit, then they would have to vote on something that's recommended to the council. So the amendment may come from the planning commission, because they've got to pass it first. That's my understanding.
So we'll hold action on the motion then, and we'll refer to the planning commission to see if there is a motion, a similar motion from the planning commission.
I'll make a motion, I hold it to
Okay,
two. Or
two dispensaries from Peterson on the planning commission. Is there a second from someone on the planning commission? Seconded by Corey. Is there discussion among the planning commission? Okay, is a roll call vote required from the planning commission?
We might as well, right?
Okay. So read the roll.
Gary Hallside.
Aye.
Larry Peterson.
Aye.
Mike Cheetah. Corey Deitch.
Aye.
Samantha Stickland. Aye. And I think Wade Bethlen is absent.
Okay, it appears that the amendment to the ordinance 675 has been passed by the planning commission. Now we have a motion on the floor for the city council. It's a similar motion.
So then, that would be the resolution that they pass to recommend to the city council.
they would have to do one more step then. They would have to take action on ordinance 675 as amended that they would recommend approval
As a resolution.
as a resolution.
Take that step and then we'll
Okay.
move on to the
Okay.
council.
So another step is needed by the planning commission to bring forth for approval ordinance 675 as amended. So is there a motion? Motion by Corey Dyke, seconded by Larry Peterson. Discussion on the motion. Roll call vote.
Gary Holside.
Aye.
Larry Peterson.
Aye.
Mike Sheba. Samantha Stickland. Corey Deitch. And Wade Buckland is absent.
Okay. Now we have a pending motion in front of the city council to pass the amendment restricting the number of cannabis dispensaries to 2 for the city of Sisseton. So, any further discussion before we do a roll call vote?
So that,
Yes.
so like the cultivating ones and the manufacturing stuff, there's still no limit on that, this, we're just,
Except with the setback things, we're.
yeah, but those are still unlimited, if they wanna have more
Yes.
farm limit or whatever,
Yeah.
we're just
Unless
limiting.
somebody brings forth another motion.
No, that's it. I'm just wondering what.
You have to look at, when
Another
you,
amendment.
I mean, part of the setback is they can't be next to each other unless it's an after. So if you have an idea that Highway 10 is gonna be storefronts, it's not gonna happen because the setbacks aren't gonna allow it. So, that,
Yeah, that's just my question.
Any other discussion? Okay, what you're voting on now is just the amendment to restrict the medical cannabis dispensaries to 2. So read the roll.
Brittany Apple.
Aye.
Joseph Just.
Aye.
Paul Stapleton.
Aye.
Lee Solberg.
Aye.
Connie Randolph. Delroy German.
Aye.
Terry Jaspers.
No. Okay, that amendment does pass. Now, the city council will act on ordinance 675 as amended. Is there a motion?
let me just look at the typo I think I found and see if I need them to change that. Yeah. On subsection 6A, on the last page, it says, no cannabis dispensary. I would like that, just, it's a typographical error, I'd like that to say establishment, but I think that we should have, do we have to change that? A typo by, okay.
No, I think.
I'm just stating for the public, for the council, for the zoning board, that section where it says dispensary will be changed to establishment to correct a typographical error.
Okay, any other discussion for the roll call vote on ordinance 675 as amended? Call the roll.
Brittany Apple.
Aye.
Joseph Just.
Aye.
Paul Stapleton.
Aye.
Lee Solberg.
Aye.
Connie Randolph.
Aye.
Delroy German.
Aye.
Terry Jaspers.
No. Okay, the motion to approve ordinance 675 has been approved. Now we move on. Is it necessary for the planning commission to remain?
No, unless you guys want to listen to,
The ordinance 676 is about the permitting process and the application process and the fee that gets set for that, so.
it might be interesting for you guys. So because there has to be specific city licensure and also state licensure for these types of establishments, we have to add to our licenses chapter a section on cannabis. So ordinance 676 is to address that, and it's an ordinance adding chapter 5.40 to the revised ordinances of the city of Sisseton. And basically, this is just going to be the whole chapter with regard to the licensing of medical marijuana. So the purpose and intent clearly is just to make sure that we follow licensing ordinances and operate in a manner which complies with state laws, regulation, protects the health, safety, and welfare of the general public, prevents potential conflicts and issues arising from ownership and employees, recognizes certain safety and security conditions, and minimizes risk of unauthorized use or access of cannabis by the general public. So then we initially go into another definitions provision, and these are the same definitions. They're going to be adopted in this chapter also. The next section, 5.40.030, is a license required, and it just goes in to address that you need no cannabis establishment may be located or operated in the city with appropriate, valid, and current cannabis establishment license issued by the city pursuant to this article. A violation of this provision is subject to the general penalty provision in Chapter 1.16010 and or Chapter 5.40210 below. Each day of the violation constitutes a separate offense. Second subparagraph, no cannabis establishment may be located or operate in the city without the appropriate, valid, and current cannabis establishment registration certificate issued by the department pursuant to the rules promulgated under SDCL 34-20G. Violation of this provision is subject to the general penalty provisions in Chapter 1.16010 and or Chapter 5.40210. Each day of the violation constitutes a separate offense. There in subparagraph A, you get the city licensure. Subparagraph B, you get the state licensure. 5.40.040 addresses the application process for each facility. The form must be one as prepared by the city. We've done that. It's in your packets for review and comments. Then the applicant must submit the following: a city application of $5,000 per license. So what we've done here is separated each license. There will need to be a $5,000 fee for a dispensary. There will need to be a $5,000 fee for a cultivation. There will need to be a $5,000 fee for the manufacturing, and there will need to be a $5,000 fee for the other facility. There's 4 of them. I apologize, I don't have that off the top of my head. But for a potential total, if you're going to operate the whole show, of $20,000 to the city. In addition to this, there are state licensing fees. And I put in there a separate license is required for each of the following: dispensary, cultivation facilities, testing facilities, and manufacturing facilities. The city will reimburse $2,500 for each type of license for applicants who fail to obtain a registration certificate for a license from the South Dakota Department of Health. Cities are doing this in order to control applications. So you apply, it's $5,000 per pop. If the state, for some reason, does not grant you a license, which we have to wait for before we grant the city's license, they're only going to get $2,500 of it back. An application would include, but is not limited to, legal name of the prospective cannabis establishment, the physical address of the prospective cannabis establishment that meets the zoning requirements identified in this chapter, those identified in Title 17 of the Sisseton Municipal Code, as well as any location requirements pursuant to SDCL 34-20G and the administrative rules promulgated thereunder. So what that means is they can apply for a certain spot, but it's got to meet all the zoning regulations that we just passed, which are included in this ordinance or referred to by this ordinance, included in the other ordinance. All the location rules set forth by statute in South Dakota Chapter SDCL 34-20G and any location rules promulgated by the administration for rules and regulations if some come up. So they've got to comply with all of those. The type of prospective cannabis establishment that the applicant will be operating, they have to identify which of the 4 it is. The name, address, birth date of each principal officer, owner, and board member of the proposed cannabis establishment. Sworn statement that no principal officer, owner, or board member has been convicted of a violent felony offense in the previous 10 years in any jurisdiction. any other information requested by the city. So then you go into 5.40.050, issuance of license. The city will issue a license unless. And so this basically says you get it, and we're going to have to add into this the limitation on the dispensaries. The applicant has made a false statement on the application or submits false records or documentation, or any owner's principal officer or board member of the applicant is under the age of 21 years, or any owner, principal officer, or board member of the applicant has been convicted of a violent felony offense in the previous 10 years in any jurisdiction, or the proposed location does not meet the applicable zoning requirements under Title 17 of the Sisseton Municipal Code, or the proposed location does not meet all location requirements under SDCL 34-20G and the administrative rules promulgated thereunder, or the license is to be used for a business not prohibited by state or local law, statute, rule, ordinance, or regulation. I think we want that now out, don't we? Paragraph 6, 5.40050, subparagraph A6. The license is to be used for a business prohibited by state. Oh, no, it's there. It needs to be there. Never mind. Not prohibited by state or local law, statute, rule, ordinance, or regulation. Any owner, principal officer, or board member of the applicant has a cannabis establishment license revoked by the city or registration certificate revoked by the state, or any applicant or owner, principal officer, or board member thereof is overdue in payment to the city of taxes, fees, fines, or penalties assessed against or imposed upon the applicant in relation to any cannabis establishment, or the applicant will not be operating the business for which the license would be issued. I would suggest that we insert a number 10 here that says the first two applicants of the dispensary that meets the qualifications will be approved. In order to set how we're going to determine that from one person to the other, because in this, our next section down, it says we're neutral as to picking these places. They're applying. So I would just recommend, as long as they're in compliance with 5.40.040 and 5.40050 in its entirety, the first two dispensary applications would be approved, as long as they're approved by the state. That's what I would suggest for your amendment. Subsection B of this provision is, in case of an application for cannabis dispensary license, the city will reject the application if the limit on the, so there's that. Okay. But I still want that more clear that it comes first come, first served, basically. Subsection C, the license must be posted in a conspicuous place at or near the entrance of the cannabis establishment so it can may be easily read at any time. That's similar to the sales tax license requirements. So then 5.40060, city neutrality as to applicants. Upon the request of the department as to the city's preference of applicants, the city will neither support nor oppose any registration certificate application under consideration by the department. Likewise, inquiry is made by the department. The city will abstain by endorsing any application as beneficial for the community. That's just trying to make us completely neutral, and so applicants don't have a chance to say that the city's favoring one party over another if there's multiple applicants. 5.40070, expiration of license and renewal. Each license expires 1 year from the date of issuance and may be renewed only by making application as provided in section 5.40.040. Application for renewal must be submitted at least 30 days prior to the expiration date. The license holder must continue to meet the license requirements to be eligible for renewal. The renewal fee is $5,000 for each license. A separate license is required for dispensaries, cultivation facilities, testing facilities, and manufacturing facilities. The city will reimburse $2,500 for applicants who fail to obtain a renewal from their registration certificate from the department. Failure to renew a license in accordance with this section may result in additional fees. Upon expiration of the license, the city may order closure of the cannabis establishment. If a license holder has not operated an establishment for which it holds a license in the preceding 12 months, the license will not be renewed. Then we deal with suspension, 5.4080. A license may be suspended if the license holder or an employee or agent of the license holder violates or otherwise is not in compliance with any section of this article or SCCL Chapter 34-20G. Consumes or smokes or allows any person to consume or smoke cannabis on the premises of the cannabis establishment. Knowingly dispenses or provides cannabis or cannabis products to an individual or business to whom it's unlawful to provide cannabis or cannabis products. A license may be suspended if the license holder has its department-issued registration certificate suspended, revoked, or not renewed by the department, or if the registration certificate has expired. A license may be suspended if the license holder creates or allows or be created a public nuisance at the cannabis establishment. Then we go into revocation, 5.40090. A license may be revoked if a license is suspended under section 5.40.090 and the cause for the suspension is not remedied. A license may be revoked if the license is subject to suspension under 5.40.090 because of a violation outlined in that section and the license has previously suspended in the preceding 24 months. A license is subject to revocation if a license holder or employee of the license holder gave false or misleading information in the material submitted during the application process, or knowingly allowed possession, use, or sale of non-cannabis controlled substances on the premises, or operated the cannabis establishment or business of the cannabis establishment for which a license is required under this article while the license was suspended. Repeated violations of section 5.40090 and or 5.40.100. Operated a function of cannabis establishment for which the license holder was not licensed, e.g. a licensed cannabis cultivation facility conducting cannabis testing functions without cannabis testing establishment license, or a license holder, owner, or principal officer, or board member thereof is delinquent in payment to the city, county, or state for any taxes or fees related to the cannabis establishment. A license holder or owner, principal officers, or board member thereof has been convicted of or continues to employ an employee who has been convicted of a disqualifying felony offense as defined by SDCL 34-20G, or the license holder has its department-issued registration certificate suspended, revoked, or not renewed, or the registration certificate has expired, or the license holder allows public nuisance to continue after the notice. So that deals with the revocation. So then there's a process with regard to the suspension and revocation that's set forth in the next one, and subparagraph A addresses how the license holder will get notice from the city of its intention to suspend or revoke, how it needs to be made by certified mail, etc. The next subparagraph says that the license holder may dispute that, and it gives the time frame for the amount of time that the license holder has to dispute it, and how a hearing will be held in front of the mayor, the finance officer, and the president of the city council to determine whether or not the suspension or revocation that had previously been given will be upheld. Then it addresses the suspension time frame of 30 days, when it begins, and how that's counted by when the notice is given to them, if they exercise an appeal, that sort of thing. Revocation addresses how long, and the initial one will be for one year, and it begins 10 days after the postmark of the notice. And then that also goes through that it takes effect upon the final determination of the revocation. So if there is a hearing requested, it would be upon the decision of that three-member board. The license holder also, who has a license revoked, may not be issued any cannabis establishment license for 1 year from the date of revocation. Then there's an appeal process, and it deals with the time frame of that and where the appeal must be submitted, etc. The next section is that the licenses cannot be transferred in Sisseton. So if we have one person or one entity apply and receive a permit for something, they can't transfer it to their brother if they move to town and do that. Their brother has to apply, or they have to give their permit up and then the next person has to apply. Hours of operation for cannabis establishment, again, we've got from 9 o'clock a.m. to 9 o'clock p.m. Monday through Sunday, and then no limitations on the hours of operations for the cultivation, manufacturing, or testing. This next provision, 5.40.140, deals with the location and special use provisions for cannabis establishments. And so then we break it down by each one. The first one's the cannabis dispensary, and it talks about how it's special, it's allowed in C1 and highway commercial, and not within a certain feet as the prior zoning one did. And then we address when the setback's measured. Then we go into different things. They shouldn't share the premises with anything that sells alcohol or tobacco. All those things are within this again. Age limit on entry, control member or methods installed by access control methods per state law. Things that we prohibit, things that we require would be within that type of provision. Subparagraph B deals with the cannabis cultivation facility. Again, it just limits that to highway commercial and then goes into the specific about that one, where it would be located. Some of the things that we are going to require with regard to security, gates, fences, etc. The next one's cannabis testing facility. Again, that's limited to highway commercial, and again, the next provisions address where it would be limited, what we're going to require for types of fencing, garbage, that sort of thing. The next one's cannabis product manufacturing facility. Again, that's limited to highway commercial, and then it addresses, again, what we're going to require with regard to fencing, ventilation, filtration, garbage, that sort of thing. Here we've got, again, the limitations, so that would need to be revised to shall limit cannabis dispensaries to and none for the rest. 5.40.160 addresses that a building permit is required for these, regardless if it's new construction or remodeling, etc. for a building. It addresses that there and what they need to be in compliance with. Also says in the next provision that they're that we've adopted the National Fire Protection Code, Chapter 38, as it refers to cannabis growing, etc., and that they have to be in compliance with that. Section 5.40180 states that public cannabis smoking is prohibited regardless of buying it there. You can't walk outside and smoke it. 5.40.190 addresses any type of public nuisance that might come out and how we can address that as a city. 5.40.200 addresses liability for any violations. Even what we're trying to say is that if you have an employee that doesn't have anything to do with the operation of the business, if they still break the laws, the company or the business is still liable for those, and licenses can be revoked and suspended based upon just the Employees Act. Penalties, that addresses some penalties for some of the violations that we've addressed through here. Severability clause, that basically says if any part of this ordinance is found to be unconstitutional, or is prohibited for any other such means, that the rest of it shall stand, that we just take out the one that the court finds is unconstitutional or wrong for some reason. The next section, it says most stringent regulation applies. This says nothing in this section is intended to supersede or modify state law. And when you're reading our provisions with the state law, the most stringent one is applicable. Even if our ordinances say that it's more wide open than the state law, I'm sorry, the state law will rule there. And that's just because if there's amendments that come forth, then we can fall back on those until we get a chance to amend this. Or for some reason, if we've missed something when we're drafting this and they're more narrow as to their definition or a place or a location or something like that, we can fall back on that. And then it just says the rest of our laws and chapters of our ordinances shall apply to the cannabis establishments, including but not limited to, and it's all 4 of them. So any questions on that?
Under the suspension and revocation process, with the hearing panel consisting of those 3, how would that work if maybe 4 other people from council wanted to provide input? Or how does
It's
that?
limited to those 3. Meaning, they will note the time and date of the hearing, those 3 will appear, the people will present their evidence, none of the rest of the council will be there to hear their argument. That's the impaneled hearing.
The reason it was put that way, it was put by position, not by person, because as we go forward with this ordinance, none of us may even be here anymore. So how do you designate them? Well, should this be made of 4 council members, and which 4 council members? It was just easier to define who should serve on that by the positions that they would hold within the council. That was the thought behind it.
Any other questions? I know it's a lot.
So with ordinance 676, basically what you're doing is you're establishing the application process, how do you maintain and hold that license and stay in good standing, and you're establishing the fee. Now, the fee is something that, that we have the ability to set, and that's what this ordinance does. And each community may do something different. Read the Watertown paper, I think they set a fee.
It's coming in really kind of all over the board with that by virtue of what municipality is addressing something. Some people are using the fees to limit numbers. Some people are having a lower fee for the initial year and then jumping up to a higher fee. It's basically just community and what the council members' input is.
Any more input from the council on the ordinance as proposed? At a minimum, we'll have to have some amendments, and maybe, city attorney, you can state what that amendment needs to be in references so that the person that wants to bring forth that motion knows what it is.
Okay, so 5.40.150, limitation on number of cannabis establishments will need to be revised to state that the city of Sisseton shall limit cannabis dispensaries to 2 at one time, and there shall be no limit on the number of cannabis. Let's get to cultivation facilities, testing facilities, and manufacturing facilities would be the change.
Does everybody understand those? Are there any other additions, proposed additions to any of that amendment? Now would be the time to include it in the amendment if you're proposing anything else, any other changes. Is there a motion then for an amendment to ordinance 676 as stated and as will be written in the public record by our city attorney?
So, Mr. Mayor?
By German. Is there a second? Seconded by Just. Discussion? Roll call vote.
Brittany Apple. Aye. Joseph Just.
Aye.
Paul Stapleton.
Aye.
Lee Silver.
Aye.
Connie Randolph.
Aye.
Valerie German.
Aye.
Okay, motion is passed. What's that?
Do we want him to look at this and pass
does that need action?
I don't know
that
if it does.
needed- I just included it so they could see.
Okay. I guess if any of you guys have comments or suggestions on the application for license that we put together, let Amber or me know, and we can make sure that that's in good form.
I think the application process is part of ordinance 676, isn't it? It's just us using this document to gather the necessary information.
Yeah, that ordinance requires that this be on our form. So if you guys have any comments on the form, let us know, because that's what we're gonna be using.
Okay. Okay, then we have to act on ordinance 676 as amended. So I would entertain a motion to pass ordinance 676 as amended. By German, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Stapleton, discussion? Roll call vote.
Brittany Apple.
Aye.
Joseph Just.
Aye.
Paul Stapleton.
Aye.
Lee Solberg.
Aye.
Connie Randolph.
Aye.
Delroy Sherman.
Aye.
Ordinance 676 is approved in its first reading. Now, there's a question here as to timing and the possibility of a special meeting for a second reading after notice. Maybe our city attorney and our finance officer can kind of take us through the timeline here going forward.
They have a second reading five days after the first reading, so basically.
Yeah, the issue that we're running,
Monday.
issue that we're running into is the ordinance that you guys previously passed earlier this year to kind of band-aid us through October 4th when the state rules and regulations are supposed to be public and approved, which we're not sure if that's going to happen because they've had a couple of meetings about some various changes, but we're shooting for that date. Is if we wait to our next meeting, our next meeting is on October 12th. So we are going to have 8 days, basically, where we're not going to be covered in any sense. So we can have a special meeting to have the second reading. Well, 8 days plus 20.
And plus, it's 20 days after the publication
Yep.
date, so
So
it would be even longer.
Yeah, so 8 days, then we have to publish in the paper the entire ordinance. And then once the publication date, which would be a Monday of the following week, then 20 days after that. So if we have a special meeting, we'll shorten that amount of time within October where we're kind of in limbo without any ordinance that's applicable right now for those licenses. Like, we can take the licenses and we can't approve until peer approves. So if peer is still getting their ducks in a row, which I'm assuming it's going to be a while, I don't think we'll necessarily have an issue, but I still don't want to delay something too long if we can prevent it from this side. And so one of the things we're running into is Terry's going to be out of town, and whether or not you guys are open to having a special meeting in order to try and cut off some of that time frame at the end. Does that make sense? Terry, when are you going to be gone?
I have to tell the whole. I'll
Can you suggest a date where you'll be here, where a meeting would be good? Would that work better? Yeah, I didn't mean that. The whole city. Let's go to Terry's house.
The soonest I could meet would be Wednesday the 29th. Anytime after that, between then and whenever our first meeting would be. So,
What does the council think? Are you guys open to having that special meeting to have the second reading?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Do you guys want to go ahead and have it on the 29th then?
Yes. Wednesday the 29th?
Yeah.
Yes.
Should we,
What time? Or do we have a time set?
5:30, 6 o'clock, which
Or any time is fine.
people like to eat before those, or?
what time?
5:30.
5:30?
Okay.
Okay.
And I'll come to that one too, just in case there's legal questions, because this is mostly a
So for
legal.
the sake of the public then, well, the action that we've taken here tonight, both ordinances will be printed as amended. The public will be able to review them.
We can post it on our website.
Yes.
Yeah.
It won't be published in the newspaper until after the second reading.
Okay.
And I think we should say maybe that copies are available at City Hall and just have maybe a few available for in the front office there. And I'll keep some at my office too.
So you will make those changes?
I'll make those changes and get them to you tomorrow.
Okay, figured that would take a considerable amount of time.
Thank you guys for that.
It's a big thing. All communities are struggling with it. And it's probably one of those things that everybody will learn as we go on. And more than likely, if we do have establishments here, future amendments, may be necessary to ordinances as we learn things. So we may not have it perfect the first time.
And I think that's the position a lot of communities are taking, is this is absolutely new for everybody. And there is a slight learning curve, and we may have to be addressing this at future meetings for amendments.
Okay, so ordinance 674 is the second reading of our 2022 budget appropriation and adoption. So is there a motion to approve ordinance 674 budget appropriation in its second reading?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Just, seconded by Randolph. Discussion? Roll call vote.
Brittany Apple.
Aye.
Joseph Jess.
Aye.
Paul Stapleton.
Aye.
Lee Solberg Stephano. Connie Randall.
Aye.
Valerie German.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Ordinance 677 is the salary ordinance for 2022 and the remainder of 2021 for the city of Sisseton. Now, we've been discussing this, as general discussion at some of our previous city council meetings and getting some input from the council, as to potentially what they would like, to see in this. We polled some surrounding cities for what they paid for similar positions. We got input from the county regarding what some of their wage scales were for county folks. And basically, what we've done, the finance committee has actually met twice, to look at this. And what we wanted to do in ordinance 677 is we wanted to focus on public works positions, which would be our street department, the water department, sanitation department. We felt that overall, probably our wage salary was based on what information we had from other cities, that we were behind and more adjustment needed to be made there. Probably then followed by our police department. The other thing we wanted to accomplish with the salary ordinance was to provide a base rate, kind of a range, that depending upon a new hire that we hired, depending upon what their experience was, we could hire them within a range. We've never had that before within our ordinance of the city. It was a locked-in number for that position. This gives us some more flexibility with our pay scale, that depending upon people's qualifications, the things that they bring to the job, when they're initially hired, where they can be slotted within that base rate. The other thing that we wanted to accomplish with the salary ordinance is to award employees for dedication and tenure for the city of Sisseton. And what is proposed is that depending upon where they're at and the number of years, there's going to be an automatic, if this is passed, an automatic pay increase once they reach a certain tenure threshold, number of years of service to the city. So that's what's before you. I know both Connie and Brittany, spend time with Amber and I, and, I directed Amber to contact the other cities and to obtain the information. She obtained the information from the county. She ran a lot of the numbers of, what impact it would have on our overall budget. And that was in your packet as well. So, if this is adopted as proposed, it's probably an additional $90,000 worth of cost to the city as opposed to what we've been normally doing, that 3 to 4% salary increase. So it's a pretty significant impact on our budget, but yet at the same time, we were falling behind in being able to adequately compensate our employees. So that's my spiel. I'll give Brittany and Connie an opportunity to express any feelings that they may have about the process in bringing this ordinance before you for action.
You want to start or you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay. I know that there has been some concern among some employees or other people familiar with maybe some of the employees that work for the city. Some concern maybe that other municipalities were paying more than we were. So, I always think it's important to make sure your employees feel valued. So I think these raises are appropriate. We spent a lot of time on this. And, I appreciate everybody's work that they've done, especially through COVID and not having enough workers. So I think this is well deserved for you guys.
So, if there are any questions about, any individual, when we act on the actual ordinance, the ordinance reads all of our city employees and what their wage rate is going to be. If there's a city council person that has an issue, with a particular wage rate, that type of thing, it's something that we're going to have to cover in executive session. So we're not going to discuss any individual employees, at a public meeting. I think it's appropriate if there are some issues that they have with any particular employee's wage, that we can take a motion to go into executive session and have that discussion.
Even if it's not a specific employee? It's just specific to the department? How would you like to handle that?
If it's to a specific employee, if it's a departmental position, and we're not talking about an employee, because we're setting Exhibit A here, it sets salary rates for those positions.
I wasn't really familiar with the certificates going into this. I didn't really, know so much about the water treatment certificates. So I guess I did take it upon myself to look at what those certificates were. I did go to the DE&R website and look through those. I know that both Gary and Michael are certified in those classes. The one thing I just want to bring to the council's attention is that in going through their website, I did read, and I have it here, that one of the frequently asked questions was, does a person have to be certified to take water or wastewater samples? And the answer is no, that anyone can take samples. However, they are required to have a certified operator be in direct responsible charge of its operation and maintenance in order to be in compliance with the operator certification rules. So they can have non-certified personnel working under them. It's my understanding that we need to have a certified operator doing certain tasks. So just to make sure I was reading that properly, I did reach out to the DENR, and they did clarify for me today that you just need one person certified, and that the other employees underneath do not necessarily need to be certified. So my recommendation would be that we maybe change the hourly wage range from $18 to $20 to $17.25 to $19 for the starting wage, if it's not required that all employees be certified.
following question then is, if your licensed operator is out sick, gets killed, you're out of compliance. So we're a small community, we have 2 licensed operators.
We currently do have 2 licensed, so,
Correct.
yeah. So it's my understanding, does the Water Streets Department ever go and assist on weekends or anything testing water, or have they in the past?
No.
Never.
They just go to check the alarm.
Check the alarm, check the quantity of chemicals, and to be around in case we need to get an emergency, in case we need muscle.
Delray, to that, I would think that if we lost an employee through a catastrophic event like that, that I would believe that the state would allow us to have another person be certified in their place.
If I remember when Michael got certified, he took classes.
Yes.
So it's not something that, hey, he's got to go through a process that takes time. And I don't think they're going to waive that because that's the instruction as to how you test it. Correct, Barry?
Correct. It's a long process. It's not open book. It's 3 days of classroom, very, very hard test. And there's 6 levels of certification each have to have. I have 7, Mike has 6, which is required by the state. You get in the case of my situation at my age, thinking of retirement someday. If I would up and retire and you have no certified operator, there is no one else that's going to come in and do the job. If Mike wouldn't be certified, we would definitely be out of compliance. You just don't take someone from another town and bring them in and say, hey, here's your job. So I'm not agree with that. I agree 2 employees should both be certified, so either one can do the job, just in case.
And that's where I would like to discuss as some more crossover, you know, because if you retire and might go somewhere else and quit, who do we have step in? Would it be an incentive for the street department guys that do help out on occasion to give them an extra benefit if they got some certificates?
It's a job that you need to do every day in order to become familiar. There's a lot of dangerous chemicals, there's stuff there that will kill you. And if they aren't dealing with it on a daily basis so they feel comfortable, I would not feel comfortable with somebody that just because they have a certificate, say something happens in 6 months and they haven't used their knowledge to come in and try to take over, it just wouldn't happen. So I don't think it would be a benefit to the city to cross-train them, you might say. Because I'm not going to take someone from the street department that has a certificate and say, well, come on, let's change chlorine cylinder, let's fill this chemical, let's do this every day, because they're busy doing their own jobs. And it's a job that needs to be a daily, weekly familiarization in the processes that go on to provide clean water and safe sanitation.
And I understand what you're saying, but then we're left with that situation when you retire and might decide to go somewhere else, and then we have no one. Where we have people getting certificates and giving them the incentive to get certificates to get on a little better pay scale.
Right, with their workload gone, they're not just going to say, well, all of a sudden, I can do the job, because they're not going to be able to. Even though there's
But they're already started on it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a way to incentive people to.
If you don't use a lot of that stuff every day though, like Gary said, if you're not doing it every day, just because you have a certificate from 6 months ago, then now you don't know what's going on.
I mean, they're not going to come help me every day.
It's kind of putting them on a bad spot.
Procedures, I think it'd be more of a danger. You know, it'd be nice to have people that know this stuff, but I don't see it would ever work. As long as you have 2 certified operators and basically they're happy with their jobs, which Mike and I are, I mean, nothing's going to happen unless I would keel over, but I guess that's just a chance you take. I mean, you might lose your whole street department one day. Then we need to lose
Gary,
them
do you
all
know, in other municipalities, do they have all of their water people certified and everything?
Yeah, Watertown, I mean, everybody there has to be at least class 2. Majority of them are class 3, and there's only one that is class 4. But Watertown separates their water department from their sewer department from the street department, and nobody's cross-trained in bigger cities. Then you got small towns like Summit and such, there might have one guy that does everything. You know, so if they lose him, they lose their street superintendent, they lose their water department. But I guess in my opinion, I don't agree with sending them off to training like that. I appreciate the help, but I don't want them to be responsible for all.
I believe what she's asking is, for a community our size, our two operators are licensed, and the majority of communities our size are the same way. Both operators are licensed operators that are on the job.
I know Bill Lake has 3 water operators, and they're all certified. But I don't believe any of their street departments are certified in water or wastewater. It's just, I feel uncomfortable.
Okay, any other discussion or action by the council regarding making any changes to Exhibit A? Okay, maybe some comments on Exhibit A then. Basically what it does is the police department, that remains the same as $1 per hour increase for getting your certification. That's what we had in the past. But we had a 15-cent gain for anybody that received any of the certificates that we've been discussing, the water treatment certificates, as well as the commercial applicator license. Those have all been increased to 25 cents as part of this exhibit and part of our ordinance. The other thing is in the police department, we have one of the officers that does firearm instruction and taser instruction. And that's necessary, you know, for our officers to become certified. And it's a significant advantage for us to be able to have a member of the police department have that training and be an authorized instructor. There is a savings there as opposed to having to send them to a different location. So we figured that was warranted to pay that individual 25 cents for that firearm certificate and taser instructor certificate. So what Exhibit A does, basically it slots all the positions. It's our guide when we hire people in the future. And, you know, before we had a 50-cent per hour pay increase after 6 months. We're starting people at a higher base rate, and they'll get a 50-cent per hour increase after a year. So that's a change from what our policy is right now. But the other part of that, at 3 years, 10-year, we pay an extra 50 cents. At 6 years, 50 cents. At 10 years, 75 cents. 15 years, 75 cents. 20 years, 75 cents. 25 years, 75 cents. And 30 years, 75 cents. So, and in the part-time positions, it's 25 cents for each of those pay periods until you get to 10 years. And it's 50 cents, 15 years, 15 cents, and all the way to 30 years, 50 cents, excuse me. So for the part-time positions, there's still a 10-year award, but it's scaled down some from the full-time employees. So, Exhibit A is part of Ordinance 677, and it's referred to there. Are there any other questions at this point in time? There will be a chance for further discussion. Like it indicated, if there's someone that wants to discuss a particular wage rate on an employee, we'll have to go into executive session for that. Any reason to go in executive session? Okay. Well, I'll entertain a motion at this time to adopt Ordinance 677.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
By German. Is there a second? Just. Discussion. Roll call vote.
Brittany Apple.
Aye.
Joseph Just.
Aye.
Paul Stapleton.
Aye.
Lee Solberg.
Aye.
Connie Randall.
Aye.
Hillary German.
Aye.
Motion is passed. These will become effective on our second reading. So the date of effectiveness would be what?
The effective date will be 20 days after the publication
Okay.
of the ordinance. So you have the second reading, and then it gets published, and it's 20 days after that that it goes into effect.
So approximately November 1st then.
Yeah.
Okay, councilman reports. Did I miss anything on the agenda anymore? I think we've got everything. I should always ask that in case of. Okay, you had something? Did you have something? That's not on the agenda.
Oh. I just saw right here that it's personnel, so I didn't.
Let's do mayor and council reports, and then we'll go into executive session, I guess, here.
I don't have anything right at this time.
You have anything?
Yeah, I guess I reached out again to our Holton Engineering about the ice skating rink, hoping, reminding them last Monday that we had a meeting this Monday. And if they could get something to Amber before Friday by noon, we would have it at our next meeting, which is tonight. And obviously they didn't reach out to Amber, so I guess I don't know where we should go now.
Did you say Mike still had some plans for that or something once?
Mike Ralston, he never had plans, but he supposedly, Myron said he had some material and he had a bid.
He gave us this a while back, so.
Yeah, this is a bid from Ralston, it's for 76, 28, 25 to do the work. But as we discussed earlier, you know, we thought maybe it should be engineered since it is a city project and have the right drainage and but I don't know, I stopped and talked with them and they were actually over in our sledding hill, we're taking shots over there thinking we should dam that up and put an ice skating rink over there. And I was like, well, it's not where we kind of want it. And they said that spot is too small for an ice skating rink. I said, well, that would work for us for now. And asked them, you know, or told them what we kind of discussed as far as maybe a liner, just giving us options. And they said, well, the first time I asked them, they said, yeah, they're not that expensive. This last time, and they said, well, those are way too expensive. So, I mean, it's.
I think we've got, didn't we form a committee to kind of research that? I think you're on that, and I think we had a couple people from the public.
Yeah.
Brittany, I think you were on that, and I think Rochelle Schultz was on that too, wasn't she?
And our next move was go to the engineer and have them design something or give us a little, I don't know, little direction, if you will. You know, I mean, we kind of know what we want or what we can do. We're kind of limited on the space. We have the lot. But so I don't know if we continue to
Maybe
seek
come
their help.
directly to the office versus hitting them up on the street sometimes.
I went directly to the office
Okay.
twice. So, I mean, early morning, when they had nothing else to do, all three of them were there. I discussed with all three of them. So I don't know if we look elsewhere or other engineer, pay a little more money and actually get the project done.
Yeah, I mean, now is when they said we should probably,
You're doing it.
yeah. So,
So I guess if you guys can continue to work on it, I guess we're at the time of the year where we need to get something done.
Do we have the rest of the council and the mayor's permission to maybe see our engineers out there for help or pay them to do it or?
So are Holton's interested in doing anything at all?
They seemed like they were willing to do something for us, but every time I talk to them, they haven't got to it. And like I said, they tried changing.
and that's the second time, because we tried for the last council meeting too.
Yeah.
Well, I can reach out to Helms and have them get in touch with you. I'll initiate that. And we'll just see what they say, you know, if they're willing to do some work for us at a limited cost to begin with. But I'll have a discussion with them. If we do enough other work with them, they can maybe put us in the right direction at least anyway.
Do you think I should notify Holton of that? Or just?
Well, follow up with Holden and see if, he's got something. I guess you can continue to work with him, but I'll reach out to Helens as well. I'll let you know what I find out.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Sisseton? So, Brittany?
I did get a call from someone who was just kind of wondering what, now that we have code enforcement, I suppose people aren't probably going to be mowing the lawn anymore, with grass clippings and such in the street. Is that still something we would want to go have them call City Hall for, since code enforcement isn't, I guess, where are we
Yes.
directing them?
As your legal counsel, grass clippings on the street are bad because motorcyclists can lose control of their motorcycle. And so if they have knowledge of a bunch of grass in the street and they're from the public, have them communicate it with City Hall at the very
Yeah,
least.
that's not something code enforcement.
Okay.
is gonna
Yeah,
mess around
and that's
with.
not something that Jim.
Just to know how,
Yeah.
with what ordinances we were still going to continue.
I mean, I think even with the code enforcement stuff, if somebody doesn't have his number, if they want to call and complain about a nuisance property, they can still call City Hall and City Hall can keep a list for them.
Okay.
Because that's what people are used to.
We just don't want to get too much into it, you should still give the number of Joel to them, depending on what they're complaining about.
Yeah, but I mean, if,
Because he's gonna handle like the cars, if they call about a car, well then he ought to handle it.
well, I'm not saying he's not. I'm saying we provide you with a list of
Yeah.
addresses.
Yeah.
These were complaints what we received, are the same that you've gotten.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we should handle them. I'm
It sounded
saying-
like he wanted like an application filled out from whoever was making the complaint, and then that would be turned over to him, what I read the thing.
Yeah, there's just some of those things like people put in the garbage elderly, grass clippings that he's not going to be here.
So the things that are, things that are a daily thing, nuisance, can't be addressed by him because by the time he gets here, it's gonna be gone.
Right.
That's how I would take that into consideration.
So again, we'll be trying to tweak those ordinances and having some discussions with them. We'll learn as we go with that too as well. I guess I don't have anything else, but I'll entertain a motion at this time to go into executive session to discuss personnel. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Solberg. Is there a second? Seconded by Randolph. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
We're in executive session. And this will conclude our meeting. We'll just, after executive session, we'll be adjourned.
Go ahead.
Ready? Having concluded all the items on our agenda this evening, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
By adjournment, is there a second?
I'll second.
Apple discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we are adjourned.
Brittany. How long?
This live stream is brought to you by Dakota Pond and Thrift for all your pond needs, Countryside Inn Assisted Living and Memory Care in Rossalt, where your family is our family, First Savings Bank of Sisseton. Use our online banking to save you time. Stilson Service in Sisseton with Marathon Fuels. Tri-State Water in Sisseton for all your water needs, water softeners and reverse osmosis right here in Sisseton. And, of course, the Sisseton Courier, where we do more than the weekly newspaper. Thanks for watching and have a great day.